All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. How are you all doing today? Good to see you here. Thank you for joining us for our first speaking program of the 2020, soon to be over, hopefully, 2021 season. I do thank you for joining us. I'll get all the obligatory stuff out of the way. Obviously, you see how you're spaced today for social distancing. Please do maintain your mask throughout the program, and I promise I'll put mine back on as soon as I'm done speaking as well. But we do thank you for coming out today, and I'll also have to give the bad news as well. Unfortunately, we've just got the word the museum will close again on Monday, so hopefully we'll see everybody right before the end of the year. But I'm glad you made it out today while we're still open. We are still open tomorrow as well, and we will continue to have the gift shop open if anybody has any shopping to do, as well as ride flights will continue to be available. So that's all still going on. However, the museum part, the Gold Airplanes, will be closed for the next few weeks. So anyway, could I ask everybody to please rise? Oh my gosh, I didn't bring the American flag up. We need a flag. Right over here. You can tell how long it's been since I've done one of these programs. I forgot the most important part. All right, folks. The Pledge of Allegiance, if you would. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Can I ask our veterans and active duty military to remain standing? All the rest may be seated. Thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for our freedom. Well, here we are approaching December 7th on Monday, and our program, very fittingly, of course, we're going to be talking about Pearl Harbor. And let me tell you a little bit about our featured speaker today. For those of you that haven't heard Michael speak before, you are in for a fantastic treat. He is such a treasure and a wonderful friend of the museum. I can't thank him enough. Michael Kara is an aviation and military historian. He's a professional speaker, and he spent over 35 years doing study and research, and his major focus has been on Pearl Harbor. He's got a number of presentations, and he's done a number of them for us through the years. So he's more than qualified as a historian and a speaker, but I want to tell you just a little bit about some other aspects of his life. He was a United States Marine. Thank you for your service, Michael. He was also had an entire career in law enforcement that spanned over 31 years. He, in his spare time, became a private pilot. He flew a number of different types of aircraft, and because that wasn't fun enough, he decided at one point to build his own airplane, which he also did, and he's got thousands of hours in that aircraft. But that wasn't enough, so he decided he should be a commercial helicopter pilot, and then he got involved in Hollywood in the movies, where he advised in the movie Memphis Belle as a historian for that. And now he's in other adventures that he may or may not be able to tell us about that are coming out in the future to help educate us about our military and aviation history. Won't you please welcome our featured speaker today, Mr. Michael Kara. Michael, thank you so much. I'll do the fist bump with you. Folks, if we do want to ask questions at the end, we are able to do that. I've got the sanitary napkin wipe things here. That's good. I'll wipe it off, sanitize the microphone, so we can do that at the end if Michael's willing to take some questions. Okay. All right. Thank you, Michael.
You bet. What a thrill. The last presentation I did here at the Air Museum, you were 300 plus with standing room only. It's odd to look out. As a matter of fact, I got to do this. It's odd to look out when you're the guest speaker and see everybody with the masks on. It's something to see. Anyway, this is, I think, my 7th year speaking on Pearl Harbor, not to mention some of the other presentations I do. But what's really been a thrill for me is my career and my life and the friends that I made. And each year that you folks have been to many of my presentations, you know I always recognize somebody. Mike, would you stand up, please? This is Lieutenant Mike Hines, retired from the Beverly Hills Police Department. Mike drove all the way out here today from the Magic Mountain area. What a surprise. Thank you so much. Mike and I were motorcycle policemen together for about 4.5 years. Mike was my supervisor. Mike was the best man at a past wedding. You don't find better people in life than your most cherished friends. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for being here. So, with that said, I moved, after police work, I moved to the desert, and I lived out here for 13 years. And for you, those that know me, know that a couple years ago, my wife Mary and I, we bought a new home in South Carolina. And we tell people that we fled the People's Republic of California and moved to America. But what's been a real problem for us is Mary does a lot of real estate out here, and my production work, I'm out here a lot, and we've been going back and forth. So Sun City, Shadow Hills now has new residents. We just bought a home there. And so we're moving in and getting settled in. What's nice for me is I get to play golf back out here in the desert. And how many golf guys here play golf? For you that don't play golf, I can tell you what I've learned in my life about playing golf. The most important thing in golf is the little eraser on the end of the pencil. So, anyway, today I spoke here, like I said, for 7 years on different subjects on Pearl Harbor. Today we're going to focus on the American airplanes that were at Pearl Harbor. And the deal with them is they all got wiped out pretty much. But we're gonna cover them. To make it easy on understanding the aircraft, I broke it up by bases to make it easier for you, but it's mainly about the people. I'm gonna tell you some personal people stories today that it's gonna blow you away. It's great because they were our greatest generation. Imagine today how upset we all are with this virus. 270-some thousand people have died so far this year. In World War II, in 6 years and 1 day, 27,000 plus people a day died. Every day for 6 years. 60 to 75 million people died in World War II. We had 16 million men in uniform fighting for our country. Our greatest generation, and that's why I continue to speak on behalf of them. I want to keep their memories alive. And the worst day in American history in the field of battle was at Pearl Harbor. So with that said, I'm going to move forward on the airplane talk. But before I do, I want to tell you about Mr. Leo Priest. So in my years of study, I've been working on a book for a number of years, and I keep changing it. I want it to be right, and a lot of it's based on these presentations. But somebody that I was talking to out here at the airport one day, we were talking about Pearl Harbor, and he said, "Hey, did you ever meet Leo Priest?" And I said, "No." And I thought, wow, this could be pretty interesting. So I called his house, and I got his wife, Grace. And Grace said, "You can come and ask him some questions, but if you could keep it to 10 minutes, I'd really appreciate it." So they lived not far from here, about 1.5 miles from the airport, and I drove over. And Leo was in a California National Guard outfit. And they had gone to Hawaii for 6 months. It was an anti-aircraft battery battalion. And they were there just to train. The 251st. Leo was a sergeant. And I had heard that he had some information that might help me about Pearl Harbor. All my studies, all the research, I keep hearing that when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, there was no anti-aircraft protecting them. And in my research, I found out that again, it's like it is now, peacetime armed services, they do the craziest things. In those days, when the Navy ships pulled into the harbor, they were under the protection of the U.S. Army. Go figure that one. The ships are full of anti-aircraft guns, but they're going to be protected by the Army and their anti-aircraft batteries. I had read that General Short, who commanded the Army, had locked up all the ammunition and all the anti-aircraft guns because they were afraid of sabotage. And I thought, it just doesn't make sense. It couldn't be true. I go to interview Leo. Turns out that when the bombing started on Pearl Harbor that morning, They could see the planes attacking the outfit, and you're going to hear a little bit more about this later, at Eva, up the coast from Pearl Harbor, is where the battalion was set up. I even have a picture of them. Leo runs into the commanding officer who says, go get a car. And they drive to all the Army bases to inspect the anti-aircraft batteries, which were still firing up at the Japanese planes. And I asked Leo, I said, well, what about the anti-aircraft guns at the harbor? And he said, oh, they were all locked up. It was true. It was true. The Navy ships had no protection from the attacking Japanese. With that, I'm done. I'm figuring, I'm done talking to Leo. I got my information. Thank you very much. I'm out of here. He then spent the next 2 hours talking to me. He broke down crying 3 times and told me all his exploits from Pearl Harbor all the way to 1944, when he was so badly ill with diseases that they sent him home. He told me about him stepping over his buddies on the beaches of Guadalcanal that were dead. It was so heartbreaking. I couldn't believe it. And it was so much of an honor to get to talk to somebody that actually was there. And it's those memories that I'm trying to keep alive, because we don't know any of this stuff. It's just what we read in history books or see in movies, and the movies got it all wrong. But it was people like Leo. Leo passed away in August, and Grace passed away in April. And they were a treasure. And I hope you enjoyed today's talk. I'm going to tell you about some other great Americans and what they did for our country. So, again, we're going to be looking at the American planes that were at Pearl Harbor. This is the early days of World War II now. It's the first. So you're going to be seeing pictures of airplanes that didn't make it all the way through the war. Some of them did as they got modified. Why Pearl Harbor, real quick? The Japanese Empire was a totalitarian militaristic society. And they were expanding in China, and they needed war materials. You got to remember, Japan's an island. They don't have a lot of raw materials. So they needed expansion, and they wanted the Dutch East Indies for their oil, rubber, cotton, copper, and iron, so that they could keep their military machine going and growing. What's interesting is, besides them wanting to grow, they figured out ways that they needed to keep the Americans from interrupting their war machine. And it all goes back to their history. And their history is, they're a different culture than us. It's what's paramount in their way of life. For instance, the Battle of Tsushima, it was the Russo-Japanese War. The Russian Navy came all the way up around Africa to fight the Japanese. They were in, what was the name of the harbor? Port Arthur Harbor. The Japanese had them bottled up, and when they came to fight, the Japanese destroyed their entire fleet. 12 battleships, all their cruisers, and most of the destroyers. Only 3 ships out of an entire fleet survived. Thousands of men died. The Japanese lost 3 small PT boats. It was a slaughter. The Japanese called it the decisive battle, and it became their way of thinking for the rest of their decades. It became their philosophy, it became their way of life, that they always wanted a decisive battle. In 1942, we fought them at the Battle of Midway and won. The Japanese had never lost a naval engagement since 1868. They won every battle, they won every war. So they were very confident, and rest assured, what we didn't know was, because of their industrialization, the way their industry grew, was they were the 3rd largest navy in the world, and nobody knew it. We didn't have GPS then, we didn't have video, we didn't have satellites. There was no way to know that they were building this incredible navy. This was their goals. They wanted to take out most of the Pacific, and with the Dutch East Indies for supplies, You can see on the right side there, Wake Island and the Gilbert Islands. It was their thought to bring out the American Navy to those islands, and their land bombers and submarines would just keep hitting the American Navy, whittling them down, and the Japanese fleet would come and destroy them. And then that would be the end, and the Americans would want to make peace. That was their goal. Probably one of the most famous pictures in human history, that is Battleship Row. The Japanese aircraft are attacking the Navy, but we're going to talk about the planes today. But what became so important about this was it was right again with their decisive battle, destroy the fleet. Based on that, 3 days later, off of Java, the Prince of Wales and the battle cruiser Repulse were caught at sea by the Japanese Navy. 50 land bombers attacked them. It was the first time in history that ships of the line were sunk at sea. That was the end of the battleship. From that point on, in human history, American history, naval history, aviation history, everything changed. On December the 6th, aircraft carriers were considered for reconnaissance. They were considered expendable, and the Japanese showed the world a new way to fight naval engagements. It caught the world by surprise. By sheer coincidence, the American aircraft carriers were out to sea. And we're now going to look at the aircraft of America at Pearl Harbor. And the funny part is we're going to start with the USS Enterprise, which was 200 miles out at sea. The Enterprise was a fairly brand new aircraft carrier. She was commissioned in 1936, only 5 years old. Admiral Halsey had taken, 12 aircraft from VMF 211, a U.S. Marine Corps fighter squadron, to Wake Island and drop the planes off. On the way back, they were supposed to be at Pearl Harbor that morning at 7 a.m., and because of a storm, they were late. So 200 miles out, Halsey doesn't know about Pearl Harbor. The attack hasn't happened yet. Halsey sends, 18 Dauntless dive bombers out to patrol in front of the aircraft carrier to make sure that there's no submarines. Everybody knew war was coming, they didn't know when. And Halsey wants his fleet protected. The Enterprise had nothing but good luck in World War II. It's the most decorated warship in World War II. It was out at every major battle and was the most decorated warship. Except for that morning, she had some bad luck. The 18 bombers flew right into the attack at Pearl Harbor. 4 of them were shot down by the Japanese. 3 of them were shot down by our own anti-aircraft guns. They just wiped them out. The others landed at different bases. They were all shot up, and some of the planes weren't even usable again. More bad luck. 5 o'clock that afternoon, Admiral Halsey gets a radio signal to find the Japanese fleet and attack it. He launches torpedo bombers, fighters, and Dauntless dive bombers to attack the Japanese fleet. They went out for a couple hours, they couldn't find them. The Dauntless dive bombers and the TBD Devastators, the top left picture, they made it back to the ship. The fighters didn't have enough fuel, so they called ahead to Hickam Field, which is the Army base next to Pearl Harbor. Everybody knew they were coming. It was getting dark. All the anti-aircraft guns on. Everybody was warned, hey, flight of F-4Fs is coming in. And as they got over Hickam Field, our gunners proceeded to shoot them down. Of the 6, 4 were shot down, and 3 of the pilots were killed. It was really sad, but that's how Pearl Harbor started for American aircraft. So I wanted to share that with you. The Japanese, you can tell from this picture, they always had, everything that they did was complicated. All their war plans for air attacks, for sea battles, I could show you I could spend hours just talking about how they just went on, making things so complicated. And here you can see it. You've got 353 planes attacking, and the most important thing was they needed to knock out the airfields. And so at 7:40 that morning, 183 Japanese airplanes are coming into Pearl Harbor when the lead guy, Commander Genda, who set it up, had the first 2 squadrons pull off to go attack the naval base at Kaneohe. At that same time, coming in from California, they'd been flying all night, were 12 brand new B-17 bombers. There was 4 C models and 8 E models. Because of the flight was over 2,500 miles, they were stripped of their ammunition and all the guns were packed in Cosmoline. They were flying in unarmed. At that moment, they reach this Hickam Field and they are getting shot up by the Japanese. Landon, the commanding officer, calls everybody on the radio and says, break it up, find an airport, you're on your own. And everybody scattered, and the B-17 started landing at different airports or airfields. I'll show them to you. I actually have a picture. Those are 2 Val dive bombers passing one of the B-17s on its way to attack Battleship Row. For you people in the back, that might help you see them a little bit better. While you're walking around the museum, this is a piece of artwork by Mr. Stan Stokes, probably one of the best aviation artists in the world. You'll see his artwork all throughout the museum. I have one of these pictures myself, and this pretty much shows it. I've got this at home. Huh? Anyway, you can see Battleship Row is aflame, and the bombers were attacked mercilessly. Okay, so we're going to talk about stories you've never heard before. This is fun. Because there's how many pilots in the room? There's a bunch. Okay. So Piper Cubs, small little airplanes. That morning, it's a Sunday morning, so most of the Army, Air Force, and Navy pilots, they're still in bed sleeping. So the skies are pretty clear. And that was when people used to go out to the airport and pick up a plane to go fly and go check out Pearl Harbor and take pictures and have fun and go get lessons. That morning, there were 3 FBOs, flying service outfits, at John Rogers Field. How many of you have flown into Honolulu Airport? In 1941, it had a 2,000-foot dirt runway. Not 747s, not DC-10s, nothing like that. It was a dirt runway. That's it right there. You can see the 2 hangars. And there were these 3 FBOs. It was purchased, get this, for $20,000. So next time you're flying into Honolulu, I hope you enjoy the moment. Here's a close-up of the first hangar, and it was built by a lady named Gambo, who you're going to see here in a minute. And what was really popular in those days was to fly Inter-Islands Airways. That's a Sikorsky S-41. You know it now as Hawaiian Airlines, still flying. And I just wanted to put that picture in because if you look at it, it's basically a boat with a big wing attached to it. And people used to fly those back and forth to the different islands. Okay, so back to John Rogers Field. That morning, Ray Vidosek and his son, 17-year-old Martin, took a J Cub up to go fly around the harbor. They're up flying in this very airplane. If you go to Pearl Harbor and you go out to the Air Museum that's there on Ford Island, you will see this airplane still hanging from the rafters in the museum. They've restored it. It is the actual plane that Ray and his son were in. And when the Japanese started shooting at them, they dove back down to John Rogers Field and they were able to land, and they actually jumped out of the plane and hid in the bushes and watched the entire attack. Now, they had gotten the plane from this lady, Marguerite Gambo, She owned Gamble Flying Services. It's 1941. I'm going to introduce you to another lady. These women were pilots in a man's world. They own their own flying school. They own their own business. And if you watch the movie Pearl Harbor, you'll see this brought up, but they don't do it right, and I'll get to that. Marguerite was up with Ray Oderwild. He had just soloed on December the 1st in the picture that you're looking at. They were both up in that very plane. She took the controls when the Japanese started shooting at them, and she was able to land without them being hit. So you can't make these stories up. Along with her, Tommy Toberlin in this airplane, 33838. His Cub, they were up, him and his instructor, I beg your pardon, he was the instructor with a student, James Duncan. They got shot at to the point where, get this is how much research we can do in this day and age. Lieutenant Takumi and Lieutenant Jiro peeled off from the other 9 Zeros that were attacking Pearl Harbor and shot his plane full of holes. He was able to land at Rogers Field, and they walked away unscathed. Also up flying that morning is Cornelia Ford with her student, Ernie Zumala. They're over John Rogers, which is right next to, if you've been to Honolulu Airport, you know it's right next to Pearl Harbor. They're there doing touch and goes. I feel sorry for Ernie. All you guys that are pilots, you all remember the first time you soloed. It's an experience you never ever forget. And there's Ernie doing touch and goes, and they are up when the Japanese pull up and start shooting at their airplane. Miss Ford takes the controls and gets the airplane back on the ground. And I just can imagine what's going through his mind. Poor Ernie's going, wait a second, I wanted to solo today. And he's got to put that off until the end of World War II. I found her logbook. Cornelia wrote down in her notes, I'm going to read it to you, it's kind of interesting. Flight interrupted by Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. An enemy airplane shot at my airplane and missed and proceeded to strafe John Rogers, a civilian airport. Another airplane machine gunned us as we landed, and we jumped out and got to the back of the hangar. Again, another woman, 24 years old, Cornelia Ford. I could do a whole presentation on this lady's background. She's famous for 2 things in aviation history. She was one of the first people to see the Japanese attack Pearl Harbor, and she is the second woman to join the Women's Auxiliary Ferry Service, which became known as the WASPs eventually. She was the second one. In 1943, in a mid-air collision, she died. She is the first American woman in aviation history to die on duty. Not to mention she had a cute little outfit. If you've seen the movie Tora, Tora, Tora or Pearl Harbor, there's a famous scene where they show a yellow biplane being chased by the Japanese, and she pulls up and out of the way. In the movie, she's portrayed by a 43-year-old woman flying a biplane. Why they couldn't get it right and show the Piper Cub that they were in, or actually they were in an Interstate Cadet. I don't know why the movies do this. By the way, at John Rogers Airport, when she landed and they were strafing the field, a DC-3 from Hawaiian Airlines was getting ready to fly to Maui. All of the passengers were already on board, and they got them off and got them into the hangar, and the Japanese hit this aircraft. It caught fire, and then on the second pass, bullets clipped the fire extinguishers in the plane, and it actually put the fire out. You can't make this stuff up. That morning, the owner of KT Flying Service, this is Robert Bob Tice, him and his wife Edna were standing next to the DC-3. They came out to the airport that morning because 2 Army pilots, actually they're civilian pilots, but they're Army soldiers, they took a pair of their Piper Cubs up to fly. And they wanted to welcome them back because Bob knew that the 2 Army sergeants were leaving the next day to go back to the mainland, to America. So him and Edna are standing there. The machine gun bullets strafe the field, and Edna looked at her watch. It was 7:55. This is before the attack on Battleship Row. And a bullet caught Bob in the head and killed him instantly. He's probably, you're looking at a picture of probably the first American to die, civilian to die in World War II. We talked about Leo Priest earlier. He was at Camp Malakole, the 201st Coast Artillery Regiment. I found that picture. I thought it was pretty cool, so I put it in. This is a picture of the students from the KT Flying Service. You can see Bob Tice there in the middle. He's got like a fake mustache on. These guys were all hamming it up, goofing around. The guy down on the bottom right with his hand making a smug face, that's Sergeant Henry Blackwell. And over on the far right with a nice smile, that's Corporal Clyde Brown. They had just gotten their pilot's licenses from Bob Tice, and they each rented a Piper Cub. And they took another sergeant up for a ride, and they were flying down the beach over by Eva. They were going to go right by where their coastal battery guys were at to do a flyby. And there was witnesses on the beach that saw the Japanese fighters come up behind them and shoot them both down. They were never seen again. A piece of yellow material was found on a beach a couple of weeks later, but to this day, they are still both missing in action. Lastly, for the civilians, this is Pan Am Captain Lanier Turner. He's in California. The night before, his daughter had a piano recital, and he went to it, and he got home late. And the aircraft that he flew back to Hawaii that next day is the Pan Am Clipper. You guys will know it as the Boeing 314. This beautiful airplane, as an airliner, was going to be late. Probably the best time when you want to be late. You don't want to be flying into a war. So they were about a half an hour late, and on the radio, he could hear what was going on at Pearl Harbor, and they flew on to Hilo and landed. There were 17 crewmen and 10 passengers on board. And this airplane sat there for 3 days. They had to fuel it by hand with gasoline cans. They got all of it filled with fuel, and the captain flew it back to California. He served with Pan Am for 27 years, and throughout World War II, this airplane ferried troops and materials all over the Pacific. And that's a picture of where the civilian planes were at. And then at this same time, if you'll recall, I said that 2 squadrons had pulled off from the main attack and were headed for Kaneohe. The big thing that Admiral Yamamoto said is, I want my fleet protected. You must take out all of the seaplanes that scout and look for ships at sea. Kaneohe, it's a beautiful base, Sunday morning. It is home to 3 squadrons of PBY Catalinas. These are long-range aircraft that go out on patrol and search. It's been said that of the 36 aircraft, 3 were out on patrol that morning, but they were out to the west. When the Japanese hit the base, both waves hit it for 2 hours. They destroyed every plane on the ground. There was nothing left. They were all destroyed. The hangars were all destroyed. You had 17 American officers and men killed. Just a mess. The other base that they were adamant about hitting next, and it was almost at the same, oh, by the way, kind of interesting. Kaneohe is under attack. It's like 9 minutes before Pearl Harbor is going to get hit. The officer of the day calls Hickam Field, and he says, we are under attack. They didn't believe him, and the rest is history. They were all caught on the ground. Eva Marine Corps Base, at the same time, at Kaneohe is getting hit. The Marine Corps Base is getting hit. Now, at the Marine Corps Base are torpedo bombers, the Devastator, and squadrons, not planes, squadrons of F-4F Wildcats. This is the premier American fighter the first 2 years of World War II in the Pacific. Because of sabotage and worry, you're looking at it, they were all lined up wingtip to wingtip. Not a single plane was left. All 48 aircraft were destroyed. There was nothing to fight back with. The Marines on the base ended up shooting at the Japanese planes with their rifles. That's how bad it was. And 4 of them were killed at that moment. It's easier to talk about the planes when you talk about the bases. So the next base is Ford Island. It's in the center of Pearl Harbor. You can see it here. To the right side, you can see the battleships lined up at Battleship Row. On the bottom left, where it says Pearl, you can see the little gray house hangars that are there. In this picture, they're at the top of the screen, those big hangars. That is where all the Navy seaplanes were that came off the battleships and cruisers. They would land there for maintenance in the harbor. In this picture, you can see on this far left side, you can actually see the seaplanes all lined up. And here's a close-up of the hangars and the seaplanes that morning, and there was nothing left. Matter of fact, it was totally destroyed. All of the PBYs that were there, the Catalinas, and all of the Kingfisher planes off of the battleships and cruisers, they were all destroyed. The very first bomb dropped in Pearl Harbor was not on Battleship Row. It was to take out the patrol planes so that they could not find the Japanese fleet. Matter of fact, I forgot to show you, but earlier in that picture of Pearl Harbor that's under attack, in the background you can see Hickam Field is on fire. Hickam Field is the Army Air Corps bomber base. And this is the main gate, and I found this really cool picture of B-17s flying in and landing over the base. I can tell you that by looking at the type of B-17 it is, this is probably pre-war, before World War II even started. Hickam Field was absolutely devastated. They did a good job of hitting it. The American intelligence had always been the Japanese were not very good. That they had bad skills, that they didn't know what they were doing, they had obsolete airplanes. It was absolutely a lie. On the field were 12 B-17D bombers, plus the 12 that were coming in that didn't make it. There were 12 light Douglas A-20 light bombers. These are brand new. And there were 32 Douglas B-18 medium bombers. That morning, because nobody was flying, it's a Sunday morning, the commander of the B-18 squadrons decided to take all of the new student pilots up for training. When the Japanese attacked, they hit the one hangar where all the students were waiting. Of the 24 student pilots, 22 died. They were killed instantly from the bombs. Hickam Field was a mess. When it was over, you can see from these pictures, there was nothing left. Probably for you World War II guys that love this kind of stuff, you've probably all seen this picture. It's probably in every history book. It shows one of the B-17s that came in from California and landed. Really interesting about this airplane, it lands and the Japanese fighters are strafing it constantly. Number one, the fuel tanks are they're mostly empty. And the American planes had self-sealing fuel tanks, which the Japanese did not have. This airplane did not catch fire from the Japanese. One of the bullets hit an incendiary flare in the radio compartment, and it caught fire, and it burned right through the airplane. I've never seen this picture. I found it recently along with this picture, where you can actually see the whole bomber in one picture. So Bellows got hit pretty bad. Hickam, and then along with that was Bellows Field. It's on the other side of the island. The Japanese sent only 9 fighter planes to attack it. That morning, there were 12 P-40 airplanes, just like this one. This is a P-40. Everybody knows it from the famous Flying Tigers, but the Army flew them without the shark's mouth on it. That's why Greg was kind enough to put this plane up here today. So there was a dozen of these parked at Bellows. When the Japanese started strafing the field, there were 3 pilots that were not sleeping. You gotta remember, it's before 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning. The 3 pilots ran to their planes. As they got to their planes, it's in the movie, one of them is shot and killed. The other 2 get their planes off the ground, and the one plane crashes into the ocean, literally shot down. And the 3rd plane is flown by Lieutenant George Whiteman, 2nd Lieutenant George Whiteman. He makes it off the ground, the Japanese hit it, and he is killed instantly. His plane explodes and he died. For you Air Force guys, Whiteman Field in Missouri is named after Lieutenant Whiteman. That's a B-2 stealth bomber base today. I've been talking about Japanese Zeros. For you people that don't know airplanes, this is what was attacking Pearl Harbor, was strafing and bombing. That's a Japanese Zero Zen Model 21 Zeke that are known to us as the Japanese Zero. Again, Bellows Field was completely strafed and shot up. One of the B-17s flying in from California crash landed there. What's really interesting, even to this day, all the history books say that it was just damaged. It never flew again. They stripped it for parts. The Army Fighter Base, which is in the middle of Oahu, if you've taken the tours around Honolulu and then gone out around the island and stuff. Wheeler is out in the middle, and this is a picture of the base. That big white diagonal area there, that's the ramp. And that day on the ramp, because of General Short's orders that they were worried about sabotage, all the fighters were parked wingtip to wingtip and actually overlapping each other. 150 airplanes. This is the P-36. There were 39 of them on the field. What's really a fun story, one of the pilots, the attack started, he ran out to his airplane in his pajamas. They were purple. And as he left his, to this point, I just don't know why, but as he left his barracks, he put on his .45 caliber pistol gun belt. And he ran out and jumped in his plane. And his name is, let me get this right, Lieutenant Phil Rasmussen. This is him here. He's known to this day in history books as the Pajama Pilot. He actually shot down 2 Japanese planes. When he landed, you can see in the picture there were over 100 holes in his airplane from the Japanese hitting him. Also on the field were 99 P-40s just like this one, and another 14 P-26 P-shooters. This was an obsolete fighter, but they used them for training. And to tow the targets were 3 B-12 bombers. When it was over, it was over. It got hit hard. This picture was taken, I believe, on the 5th of December. You can see how close the airplanes are parked to each other, and it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure if you hit one, they were all going to go. And it was like dominoes. All the planes just blew up one after another. There's 99 P-40s just sitting there, and the Japanese knew that this was a top-line fighter, and they destroyed all of them. And that's an aerial view of that box where all the planes are parked, and you can see it's pretty devastating. I have some pictures from the next day. These are actual Army photographers took these pictures. You can get them online, and you can see there was just nothing left. It was a pretty good job that the Japanese did. Eyewitness accounts said that the Japanese planes came in so low that they'd never seen flying like that even American pilots didn't strafe that low, and they were deadly accurate, as you can see. That's a P-40, just like this one. I have been asked in many of these programs many times, well, why didn't we fight back? With what? There was nothing to fight back with. There's been talk that why didn't the Japanese come back on a third wave and attack? I can tell you right now, 28 Japanese airplanes were shot down. Another 69 when they got back to the aircraft carriers were so badly damaged that they were unusable. So you had 103 airplanes that couldn't go out of the 353. Yamamoto and Nagumo were afraid that if they went back on a third wave, the Americans were going to be waiting for them. What they didn't know was that over 347 planes were no longer flyable out of the 408. It was a nightmare for America, and we got lucky. Getting back to the airfields, Haleiwa is on the other side of the island. It's a little training field, and there were 8 P-40s parked out there with a couple of P-36s. What was really interesting is it's a training base. And the P-40, you can see it here, the wing guns in the early models, they were 30 caliber, and it had 250 caliber machine guns up above the engine. Well, at the aerial gunnery field on Haleiwa, they only had 30 caliber ammunition. And 2 pilots, and you've seen them in the movies, got out to the field, jumped in their P-40s with only 30 caliber ammunition. They went up and attacked the Japanese. They landed back at Wheeler to get 50 caliber ammunition, which they did. A major ordered them to stand down. And they said, what? And they jumped back in their planes and took off and shot down some more planes. And that's the P-40B Warhawk. Now, what's really interesting, I love everything to be deadly accurate. In the movies, you've all seen Tora, Tora, Tora and Pearl Harbor with Ben Affleck and Josh Hartnett. These are, in the movie, they portray the 2 pilots that get out to the airfield and jump in their P-40s and go shoot all the Japanese planes down. In actuality, it was these 2 guys, Lieutenant Welch and Lieutenant Taylor. After they were told not to go back up, they each shot down 4 Japanese planes, each. Lieutenant General Hap Arnold recommended each of them for the Medal of Honor. And when it got to the War Department, it was knocked down to the Distinguished Flying Cross, which is the next medal down, because they didn't obey the major's orders. Instead of, they probably deserved the Medal of Honor for their own actions, yet that's what happened. Lastly, we're going to get to one that is going to blow you away. I'll bet you dollars to donuts there isn't a soul in this room that's heard this story. Also at Pearl Harbor that day was a brand new B-24A. The B-24s had just come out in the last 2 years. And it was faster than a B-17. It could fly a lot higher than a B-17, and it could fly a lot farther than a B-17. In early November, the head of Naval Intelligence, Commander Edwin Layton, goes to the War Department and to hit the Navy higher-ups, and it goes up the chain of command, that they believe the Japanese are staging aircraft carriers and fleets in and around Truk Lagoon, in the Gilberts, and the Marianas. And he's requesting a reconnaissance mission to go look. Well, they know that if B-17s fly over the Japanese-held islands, it's an act of war. So they're hemming and hawing. This is going up the chain of command. For all you people that think that Roosevelt knew about Pearl Harbor, he didn't. And this is another one of those stories. The President of the United States okays for 2 B-24As to leave Hawaii with high-altitude cameras and fly over the Japanese islands to see where their fleets are. This guy, Lieutenant Ted Faulkner, is a ferry pilot. The B-24A was used for ferrying high VIP people and troops around the United States and even over to Hawaii and back. He's a ferry pilot. He's not a bomber pilot, but he knows how to fly the B-24. It's new. So Faulkner and another pilot, they get ordered to fly 2 B-24As over to Hawaii to go photo recon the Japanese fleet. He gets to Hawaii. The other B-24 had to turn back. It had engine trouble. Now that B-24 finds out that Faulkner is told, oh no, you're not taking off unless you have guns on your plane to protect you. We don't want you, this is not a suicide mission. So the B-24 in California is getting loaded up with all the guns and all the mounts so that the 2 B-24s will have protection. And it's not a suicide mission. They're going to fly all the way to Australia. But they wanted the crews protected. Well, guess what? They run out of time. Faulkner is on the ground. This is a picture of the only B-24 that was attacked at Pearl Harbor. It was destroyed. They were standing around waiting for the other B-24 was supposed to come in that day, and his crew was there. 2 of his crew were shot and killed by the strafing, and 3 of them were wounded. And that is fate. If they had gone earlier in November and seen where the Japanese fleet was, I'm convinced that we might have been a little bit more prepared for what happened, but you never know. You never know. Faulkner went on to become a lieutenant colonel. He was a commanding officer of a B-29 squadron. He was shot down in 1944, and another great American, another hero, another boatload of medals for all the great things he did for our country, who died for us, and he's gone. Battleship Row, 19 ships were sunk. Of the 19, 16 were back in action during World War II and fought for us. Again, of the 402 airplanes that day, 347, that was it. All that was left was about 50 planes if the Japanese had come back. We were totally defenseless. Ford Island, I kind of want to show you, I'm done with Pearl Harbor, but I wanted to bring you up to speed on what a great country we are. By 1944, it's kind of tough, you can't see it in this picture. I'll show you a close-up in the middle in a minute. 1944, you were looking at 4 fleet aircraft carriers, and there's over 1,000 airplanes in this picture. There's a close-up. Row after row of airplanes ready to take on the Japanese Empire, and they did. So, and then lastly, October 1945, this is going to break your heart, pilots and warbird lovers. 1945, it's October. This is Ewa Marine Corps Air Station. You're looking at another 1,000 airplanes. And in the lower left part of the picture, you can see they are being scrapped. All 1,000 airplanes were destroyed because we didn't need them anymore. All 3 movies, the latest Midway, Tora Tora Tora, and Pearl Harbor. Admiral Yamamoto, I fear all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve. He never said. In the movie Tora Tora Tora, the director, Richard Flesher, came clean. He made that up. And they put it in Pearl Harbor, and they just put it in the movie about Midway. And if you repeat a lie enough times, it sticks. And I've heard it so many times that little tidbit of history from all 3 movies never happened. So with that, thank you very much. Pearl Harbor was a major disaster. Those were the airplanes that were there. The next time I'm invited back to the museum, I'll be doing part 2. We're going to cover the Japanese airplanes. Is that right?
Yes, please.
Appreciate it. I can tell you we won World War II, so that was good. Is there any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I understood when they bombed the first time, they didn't get the repair hangars like they should have. And because those were left, they were able to rebuild faster.
Right. There was talk that they were, she asked about,
Would you repeat the question? We
right.
didn't catch her on the mic.
She asked about why the Japanese didn't attack all the repair facilities. The air bases, they attacked all they got all of it. They got all the repair facilities. What they didn't get was the docks, and they didn't get the oil, all the oil tanks. In the third wave, they would have, but they didn't come back because they'd been shot up pretty good. Anybody else? Really, I usually get asked some questions. Hey, Chuck, how you doing? Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I have a little,
Just one moment.
I have a little bit of trivia for you. My mother and father-in-law lived in Hawaii at the time. He drove a truck for Liggett and Myers Tobacco Company. And he ran and said, "Can I help with anything?" So they had him take out all the cigarettes. And he collected bodies and brought them to the morgue. Yeah.
Sad day. Sad. And you know what's really interesting, if I may? What was really interesting about Pearl Harbor was the Army intelligence and the Navy intelligence. First of all, the Army and Navy, even to this day, the football games, everything, there's always this rivalry. The Army intelligence and the Navy intelligence did not share their information of what they were learning. Fast forward to 1991. The CIA and the FBI had a wall between them, and they were not sharing the information, hence 9/11. You'd think that if you don't learn from history, you're just going to keep repeating it, and I sure hope that one of these days people will wake up and say, we've got to do a better job. Anybody? Thank you very much. I'm going to stay up here if you have any questions, you want to come and chat or something. Thank you. Thanks for being here, especially with all the stuff that's going on. But it sure is a break to get out of the house, isn't it? Yeah.
All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Michael. Really appreciate it. How about one more hand for him, folks? Thank you so much. And on Monday, please remember Pearl Harbor Day. God bless America and God bless you. Stay safe, folks. Thank you very much. And have a happy holidays.
Hi, Greg.